to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.
What up? Welcome back once again to the Necro Zoo. I am Boom. And in this one, let's go ahead and add one more figure to my McFarlane DC Multiverse collection. Now, today we will take a look at the Collector's Edition Classic Penguin. Now, this is a character a lot of people have been waiting on, finally fleshing out a lot of our Batman rogues that we are missing. Now, I did end up ordering two of these from Best Buy, so I did have one to open and review, and I have one to add to my complete mint in box DC Multiverse collection. Now, there is also a platinum version, which represents a little bit more of the superpowers color scheme. Now, although I don't have that one right now, I'm not in a big rush, and eventually I will pick it up. But there are not too many big differences, just the color scheme. They are basically the same figure, so we'll take a look at this one today. Now, he does look pretty ingenious in the packaging, but let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. But first, he does come with a black DC Multiverse stand. Now, the big difference being that this one does have the DC logo in a silver paint. But remember, these are not really needed, but sometimes they do come in useful. He also comes with his data file card on the front. You do have a classic image from the comics of the Penguin. Now, one thing that separates these collector's edition from your standard DC Multiverse is, of course, the packaging. Slightly larger, a little bit of silver foil detail. And in all honesty, that that is what makes up a little bit of the higher price point. Of course, the cards are also a little bit more fancy. They do have that silver foil throughout the card. Pretty nice. Now on the back, you do have some information. Pretty cool. Now everybody's been waiting for this classic rendition of the Penguin. We did previously receive the Arkham Penguin. Basically, your same, squat guy in a suit, but now people can pretty much keep that guy in your video game Arkham display. And now we can add this more classic styled iteration of the Penguin to our Rogues Batman gallery. Now, another thing he does come with is the card stand. If anybody knows, I'm not, too super excited about these. In fact, they are starting to stack up. He does come with an umbrella. Now, I did notice this is the very same collapsed umbrella that comes with the Arkham Penguin. I did compare them, and the only difference is the Arkham Penguin one does have a little bit more of a yellow gold tone to it. In fact, I really feel like I'm going to put this more bronze umbrella with my Arkham figure, and this more gold one is the one I'm going to be displaying with this Penguin. It just fits it a little bit more, while that more dreary bronze color fits the Arkham one a little bit more. So that's something that I'll decide to do, and it's not a big deal, but it is just your basic reprint of that umbrella we received before. You do get two alternate hands. At first, I was kind of confused because you do get a right fist for the Penguin, and although it is pretty rare, Penguin is known to, throw a little bit of fisticuffs. Not really a major part of his character, but he can get violent if need be. He usually has his henchmen to do his dirty work, but he can get his hands dirty if he's called upon. Now, the other hand, at first I was confused because It basically looks almost like a gripping hand, but no, I did come to realize that this is more of a gesturing hand. So if you want to have the penguin, holding his umbrella and sort of doing a little monologue on Gotham City, this is the hand you will go to. Pretty nice. We'll hold on to that one. Now, as far as accessories goes, that is basically it. Really wish he would have came with a penguin figure since McFarlane has been on this little animal kick, little accessory kick where we've seen Crypto, we've seen that Badger with Animal Man. I really wish they would have packed in a little penguin figurine. Now, I did remedy this myself, but we'll take a look at that later on the video. But first, let's take a closer look at this figure. Now, first impressions, your classic penguin from the comics, very much representing the source material from your older DC comics. In fact, if you were just a casual fan, you would think this is very representative of your classic penguin. Nothing to see here. It's your, basic squat guy, a little bit rotund. The color scheme is very similar, although you do see usually more of a yellow color. The orange that this one has doesn't bother me at all. In fact, gives it a little bit of pop and a little bit of separation in the color scheme in total. So really happy with the figure. Looks great. Gonna look good in your Batman Rouges display. As usual, I'll take a look at the things I like, and also there are some things that I thought they did miss on. But for all intents and purposes, pretty cool addition to your collection with this classic penguin figure. Let's take a look at the head sculpt. Now, they really killed it on the head sculpt. This is great. Definitely brings images of the comics when you're thinking about Oswald Cobblepot, a more of a high class, high end villain in in your Gotham City. He has the top hat and the suit, the tails. I mean, it's all there. More of a prim and proper villain for your DC shelf. Really love the way they did the nose. It's its, own solid piece that sticks out. And while other renditions of figures of the penguin, they try to reduce the nose or connect it a little bit to make it more resistant to breakage, this is a very well done proboscis. Really happy with that. He does have his traditional monocle that he usually wears. And when you look at it, it's done more in a comic style as it's painted white. Because if it was done more in a realistic form, it would be clear. So that's pretty much standard to the comics. All in all, a great head sculpt. You got some cool sculpt details around the mouth and the jowls. And even the eyes have a little bit of added paint to give it some depth. Pretty nice rendition of a penguin head sculpt. Check out the articulation. Now, it is slightly restricted from looking down. I don't know if you were to extend the peg, it might give him a little bit more movement downwards, but he can look up very well. Pretty interesting because, of course, he has no neck. So, of course, that is going to reduce his range of movement. You do have right to left, very smooth. And, of course, you can tilt his head for some attitude. Basically, what you'd expect from a penguin head sculpt. Very nice articulation. Moving down, let's take a look at the rest of the figure. You do have side to side at the waist. You got that full tilt-a-whirl swivel. Now, there is something different, and that is that where usually you would have a lower waist swivel and then an upper chest swivel, this is one solid piece. You could still twist them, get them in some cool poses. And as far as a forward crunch, surprisingly, he does have a pretty generous forward crunch, more than I expected. And of course, he can lean back fairly well. Get him in a T pose pretty simply. Arms above the head. Move down. Now, I've heard some people complain about the vest, the way it has that really bright orange. Now, while I do appreciate the pop that it gives it, this is a very easy fix if you would like to change the color of the vest. It's not a big deal. And some people think it has like a light a light coat on it. That's why you can see a lot of the distressed parts in the sculpt work and the buttons. But I think they kind of did this on purpose to give it that worn down look. But for me, it's fine, not a big deal. So, all in all, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's move down to the lower body. This is going to be pretty hard because this is not your normal figure. The articulation is going to be reduced, the proportions are really squat. But the first thing I want to say, the first observation, they didn't put pinstripes on the trousers. Now, basically, 80% of the images online of the penguin, you're going to have some pinstripes. There's that small percentage where he just has, clean slacks, but that is definitely in the minority. Now, you can fix this by adding the pinstripes yourself, which will be a little bit of a hard task because you got to get those lines perfectly straight. Now, I'm not too sure that I'll ever try that, but I may end up doing that. I have noticed that a lot of the times figures do have the pinstripes just painted on. They don't necessarily have to be sculpted in, but it's just the issue of getting those lines perfectly straight could be a little bit difficult. Let's check out the thigh swivel. Very minimal, as I said, because of the way the figure is designed and executed. But surprisingly, you do have a swivel at the knee, which allows you to move the boot from side to side. He can kick up fairly well, and he could kick back pretty good. I'm just missing that swivel at the hip. You do have a little bit, but not too much. You do have that McFarlane hip swivel, single jointed knees. The sculpt work is done really well, but minimal range. Straighten them out. You do have up and down at the spats, right to left. All of this articulation is limited due to the way the pants are sculpted over the shoe. You do have rocker, but it's hidden inside of there. And of course, you have toe articulation. Now, before we go, let's take a final look at the lower body. Really well sculpted. That does hinder the movement a little bit. You don't need the penguin to be, doing a lot of gymnastics poses. So he can get down into some pretty nice poses for his shape. And of course, like I said, they are missing the pinstripes, which I think is a little detail that, would have been that chef's kiss for this figure. Take a look at him from the bottom. No tread and no identifying marks. Moving up the back, not much there, not much to say, just your basic slacks. I really like the real fine texture that they put on the coat just to add a little bit to the feel, give it some wrinkles. Really works well. All in all, great penguin figure. Now, another thing missing from this guy, of course, is going to be his little cigarette holder or cigarette. Of course, with the Arkham one, we went with a cigar. But of course, we know Warner Brothers in no shape or form is going to put any sort of tobacco imaging or products with their figures. So once again, we will have to fix that for ourselves, and I'll get into that here. Now, very simply, you can pop off the hands and switch them out depending on what you want to do. You got that fist hand, and you do have alternating hands for different purposes. I do keep the gripping hand because you might want to throw his umbrella in there. Now, he's supposed to have tons of different versions of umbrellas, gun firing, twirling, helicopter, gas spraying. I mean, that is one of his things, is to have all those different types of umbrellas. Very much a part of his gimmick. Now, before we move on really quick, let's go ahead and bring out our DC Universe Classics version. of the Penguin. Very similar, there are some differences. This one has a little bit more of a gnarly head sculpt. Those teeth are sharp, which is another variety in the image of the penguin you'll sometimes see, are those sharp teeth. Now, while this one is a little bit more slender, not so rotund, the arms are very long, so they can be a little bit off putting. But what I do like about this one is they did add the pinstripes to the trousers. Now, this DC Universe Classics version also didn't come with a cigarette, also didn't come with a penguin, but he did come with this pretty nice parasol umbrella. Now, it has an attachment that is sort of his gun that's like for firing, but it is removable and it does look pretty good on this DC Multiverse version of the Penguin. That's just something you can add or switch in and out for some figure photography. Now, I did talk about the cigarette holders. I did end up making two of these. Now, I did see my boy Gaines. He had his own version, which was just a paperclip painted to go into his hand. I went a little bit of a different route. I used that same black wire that I showed before when I did the grapnel gun, where you could switch out the wire to a more flexible wire. Now, the main reason I did this is because I didn't want to have to worry about any paint rubbing onto the white gloves of the penguin. So I used this black wire. I clipped off a little bit of the front copper wire, dipped it in white paint, dipped it in red paint, and then dipped the very tip in orange paint. And that is how I got this little cigarette holder. It could seem a little thick, but it's not too much off. It does fit very easily in his hand and it works well. And it was very simple to make. Now, I did make one more, and this one was completely different because this one I encased a white wire with black plastic, heated it up to shrink it, and when I shrunk it, I added a little needle, a little tip of a needle. Now, this little tip is used to stick into the crook of his mouth so he could have it in his mouth. Same thing, it's a little bit thick, not too much. It does work, but it was a very simple little addition for accessories for this penguin figure. Finally, the the main thing, no penguins. So I did go ahead and add two little penguins. I did pick these up at Hobby Lobby. I added a little bit of yellow paint because they were a little bit plain for me. But in the end, they're just an added little accessory. They were very cheap. I think they were like $3 each. And if you could find them at your craft store, they are a cool little addition to your penguin. Now, you could have just one, or as I did, I got two. Maybe you could even end up building one of those armored up penguins with a rocket, which I kind of want to do to one of these just to give me a little bit more variation of penguins that I could have. But that's just an idea for a later project. Now, as far as scale wise with the DC Multiverse, we do bring out your classic Batman. This is the Nightfall version of Batman. And as you can see, this penguin scales out pretty well. And that's the main thing about this figure. It wasn't like something I was really anticipating, but to finally have him in hand and to add him to your rogues gallery for your Batman is definitely awesome. And slowly but surely, we are filling out our comic styled shelf of Batman Rogues. We do have your classic Riddler, various versions of Joker, even throw a Catman in there, but the ones I really want to see are the Scarecrow and, of course, Two Face. Hopefully, McFarlane will get around to those. Great figure, great addition to my DC Multiverse collection. Now, very fun to take figure photography. Probably end up having some fun doing that, and we'll eventually get him up on the shelf and display him. But, anyways, you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next
me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.